Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of MS Gamers Hut. And I'm your host, Ted Michael. How did you guys like some of the games I reviewed last week? Fun, right? This week, I'm going to be reviewing games that have a sci-fi space theme to them. The first game that I'd like to talk about is called Mechanarium. Mechanarium's robot hero is one of this year's finest leading men. He's dedicated, resourceful, and oozes charisma. Yet he doesn't speak a word of dialogue, nor, for that matter, does anyone else in this traditional point-and-click adventure game. Yet, in spite of their vocal silence, Mechanarium's mechanical inhabitants communicate more effectively than many of the wordiest game characters, using often hysterical gestures and diagrams within speech bubbles to clearly establish their role in the world. These delights are further enhanced by enhancing visuals and quirky music that immediately provide a sense of place and personality. Moreover, the puzzles that provide the bulk of the gameplay are excellent, and a few of the brain teasers are tough and clever enough to tax the noggins of even the most seasoned adventurers. In spite of a few missteps, such as a painful action-oriented sequence near its conclusion, Mechanarium is a great game that makes an age-old genre feel fresh again. It won't take you long to be drawn in by Mechanarium's beautiful 2D visuals. The world is of rusting robots and intricate machines is drawn in seeking out batteries for his friends in front of an orange-hued industrial landscape. Cobwebs stretch between winding pipes that lead to no discernible place and have no discernible purpose. Aging brown buildings are weathered by jagged cracks and dull stains, while distant leaning towers covered with rivets and antennas spew smoke into the atmosphere. A wonderful clinkety-clank soundtrack enhances the mechanical mood with its alternatively tuneful and disorienting strains. This isn't really a place you'd want to live, but it's a place you believe robots would want to live. And what characters these robots are, expressing devotion, boredom, and frustration through deft animation and cute but sparse sound effects. One woman protects herself with an umbrella while wheezing into a whistle, apparently seeking an unseen taxi. A trio of street musicians toot and bangs on the corner, much to the dismay of the unhappy tenants in the apartment above. And then there's their own characters, an unlikely hero seeking to be reunited with his one true love. It's a simple journey, but the spirited protagonistic in so lovable that every step closer to your goal feels like a big triumph. A few wonderful visual touches and extra poignancy. For example, in one section, the screen goes dark and you see only a few prison cells, which makes the scene very claustrophobic. Mechanarium often manipulates your monitor's real estate in this manner, and not only is this trick effective, but it also makes the fuller environment that follow feel even more spacious. As with most point and click adventures, your progress in hiddenness by a number of brain busting puzzles, but Mechanarium tweaks conventions enough to be fun even for veterans. You can't just hunt for pixels, but you must maneuver your bot within reach of the interactive object. Environments aren't loaded with interactive knickknacks, and your movement is limited, so this is rarely a chore. Most object-based puzzles are clever and intuitive. For example, you'll obtain a metallic mutt for the umbrella lady by moving a floating oil drum near the dog and luring it over with a few drops of the stuff. Sometimes you'll have a few items in your inventory at once, but it never gets cluttered. Once you're done with an object, your good-natured pal just tosses it aside in an adorable, dismissive gesture. You'll also encounter some shape manipulations and pattern recognition puzzles, with a few tough ones, towards the end of the game. Your gray matter is in for a good workout, yet while many of the puzzles are difficult, most can be worked out with clear thinking and a little patience. If you do run into trouble, Mechanarium's excellent two-tiered hint system is there to lend a helpful hand. You can click a button and get a quick illustration hint of your general object, or you can click another button to view an entire diagram outlining the steps you need to take. In order to view the more elaborate hint, however, you have to endure a little side-scrolling shooter minigame. The minigame, it isn't awful, but it isn't very good either, though you might see it as an appropriate way to discourage you from seeking frequent assistance. A few other arcade-style minigames are unavoidable, including an annoying and overly long sequence in which you maneuver a minuscule avatar around a seemingly endless maze of 2D corridors, shooting at other little specks. Mechanarium's other flaws are much less significant. For instance, once your rambunctious robot is on the move, you'll continue to move until he's reached the next predestined stop, and the flash technology powering the game leads to a few minor annoyances, as well as the game not filling your entire screen. Those small blemishes in an inventive and endearing adventure that will have your rooting for the good guy and sneering at the bullies that have caused him so much trouble and heartache. Mechanarium, much like its personable protagonist, have a big heart and a plunky attitude that will win you over. Like the best games in the genre, it will excite your eyes and ears, but more importantly, it will stimulate your psyche. The next game I'd like to review is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I used to play this on my PC all the time, so it was fun to see it on a mobile device. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remains one of the best Star Wars games ever made, even 10 years after its original release. As such, There's no question about whether you should play it, but whether the mobile game port's touchscreen adaptation does it justice was uncertain until now. Getting around can be a struggle, but this brilliant role-playing game shines brightly on a mobile screen. Set roughly 4,000 years before the events that transpired in the movies, players travel around the galaxy doing various Star Warsy stuff as they track down Darth Moloch, who now only used to be a Jedi, but also now holds the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. The game is largely framed around a series of events that have led to a almost too typical setting where the Jedi are now spread across the universe. Many have died, or potentially worse yet, have defected to the dark side. Darth Moloch has seemingly endless resources for his war against the Jedi, which is suspected to be the result of something called Starforge. Learning the secrets of this device, its location, as well as the mysterious past of the characters who you're playing are among the main things that drive the plot of Knights of the Old Republic forward. There are some twists and turns along the way, some entirely predictable and cliche, and some not. But largely, the game is enjoyable from start to finish. There's even a earlier version of the mortality system that we've come to take for granted in RPGs these days, and players can gravitate towards the light and the dark sides of the Force, which has a drastic impact on the game. So if you enjoy a light playthrough of Knights of the Old Republic, be sure to keep it on your device for a dark play through in the future. Combat is partly based with party members that rotate in and out as the story progresses, and all of your actions are done in Dungeons and Dragons style turns, with specific actions being quested up in the fights. The game actually is deeply rooted in the Star Wars tabletop games, which makes combat have a very mature feel to it, as it all based off of an already matured battle system from the paper source material. Knights of the Old Republic is a weird game to review, being 10 years old and eventually ported to both the Mac and the PC. There's already a bazillion reviews out there, along with endless fan fiction and deep analysis of the game's plot. Additionally, the last decade has been great, where you'll find guides for everything ranging from complete walkthroughs to guides for character building to how to do hardcore solo runs. In other words, it's been long since established that this is an incredible game. The game is controlled with a variety of on-screen controls and a invisible virtual joystick of sorts to control movement. The initial impression these controls leave you with are not great, but that's largely because the default sensitivity feels way too tight. I highly recommend fiddling around with the options and finding a sensitivity setting that jives with you before you even leave the first room. It'll make playing the whole game much more enjoyable. The save system is surprisingly great for a port like this. You can save basically whenever you want, and the game's auto save system will make a save every time you enter a new area, or every 15 minutes if you're not obsessive about saving all the time. In my experience, progress loss due to saves has been minimal, which is a great thing for any mobile port of classical games like this. Knights of the Old Republic isn't a perfect mobile game by any stretch of the imagination. The lack of retina assets will undoubtedly make it an auto no for people who care about that kind of thing. And even in the best situations, the virtual controls still are a bit clunky. Additionally, having to even think about or manage your save files feels archaic. But this is a 10-year-old game designed to be played with a controller, and the porting job did is beyond admirable. As I mentioned at the top at the beginning of this review, if you've never played Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic, you're even vaguely interested in Star Wars universe, or just surprisingly deep RPG in general, this is a game you need on your mobile device. Knights of the Old Republic is easily among the best Star Wars games, and on my personal list of top RPGs I've played in my life. If you've already played the game to death, like most ports, this one offers nothing new, but you could consider doing it an opposite alignment run from what you played originally for a slightly fresh experience. Whatever you do though, don't miss Knight of the Old Republic. I don't care what platform you play it on, as long as you play it, especially if you're a Mass Effect fan. It's ridiculously interesting seeing just how much Mass Effect is in Knights of the Old Republic and how much Knight of the Old Republic is in Mass Effect. Considering it a really awesome history lesson by BioWare RPGs that also happens to be an incredible gameplay experience as well. The next game I'm going to review is Star Trek Timelines. Timelines deliver a solid strategy and role-playing experience. Players assume the role of captain of their own ship as they traverse the galaxy amidst a massive temporal flux. Players collect crew members and items from every Star Trek era. For example, if the player wishes to have Captain Picard, Ensign Mayweather, and Dax on the same away team, they can do that. This temporal flux is explained by Q, voiced by the one and only John DeLance. Having DeLance on board is a huge perk for Timelines, as this characteristic delivery combines with the game's faithful art design and countless characters, ships, and items help legitimize Timelines as a Star Trek game through and through. Timelines' role-playing focus helps distinguish itself from others less involved mobile games. Players can choose each character's equipment, load out, and assume control of iconic Star Trek ships, and even choose responses when talking with different characters. Would you approach a furious Worf diplomatically or aggressively? How would you handle a situation involving Data's evil brother Lore? Disruptor Beam went a step further and added branching mission paths to ground encounters. For example, one could choose to repel an augmented raiding party by either enlisting Klingon support or beaming down a fight hand-to-hand. This variety is a joy to play and helps engage the player for more than just quick minute-long sessions as other mobile titles do. Graphically, the game is a striking title with only a couple noticeable flaws. While 3D environments are rendered with excellent attention to lighting and color, starships themselves have jagged edges and subpar texture work. As a mobile title, these flaws are understandable considering the sheer range of hardware considerations considered. But it would have been nice if the game's graphically presentation matched the bar set by its narrative. Still, Timelines is graphically head and shoulders above most mobile games, and Disruptor Beam should be praised for their technical fidelity. It is a shame that the space environments are so attractive, yet the game's actual space battles are nothing more than on rails segments involving merely tapping the ability of crew members. While it can be fun to see a Constitution class ship face off against a bored cube, the actual experience is underwhelming. However, ground missions are more involved, as players must utilize the skills of each crew member to accomplish different tasks. While Picard is better at negotiating, the other crew members can hack a console more effectively. This strategy aspect is pleasing, and players will be forced to consider the skills of all their crew members before committing to a course of action. Overall, Timeline is a decent mobile title for a community that is lacking in variety. The title's graphics are sure to impress. The gameplay is a mix between strategy and RPG, keeps things interesting for extended play times. Unfortunately, the developer, Disruptor Beam, chooses to focus more on the game's ground mission, leaving space battles boring and tedious, but involved nature of the former help offset this con. While it would have been nice to see the game's load time shorter, as well as seeing less of an obstructive transition system, Timelines is worthy of a download. Star Trek fans looking for a game thought thoroughly utilized the brand should look no further. Star Wars Timeline is available for free on the Apple and the Google phones. Next game I'd like to talk about is Galaxy of Fire. Galaxy of Fire combines flight action, stellar commerce, and cosmic intrigue in a single download. As Captain Maxwell, you must pilot a series of ships across the galaxy, ferrying cargo, running interference, and outright challenging the various Vosk armada. It is a game with some ambition. Gamers that enjoy dabbling in Shadow of Grey will appreciate that you are not necessarily the good guy. Maxwell is a pilot for hire, and so after an initial set of missions that set up the rules and dynamics of the game, Galaxy on Fire opens the doors on an interesting, thoughtful universe. Unfortunately, you have to get through those opening missions to really appreciate what Galaxy on Fire has to offer. And even once the key to the cosmos are handed over, you must still push through a series of annoying design decisions, like forcing you to replay uneventful mission legs. You typically must fly to an initial mission checkpoint for the action to start. If you die during combat, you must redo the first section of the mission where nothing happens. Galaxy of Fire offers two control options, tilt and touch. Initially, I found the tilt control to be mildly unresponsive, so I switched over to the touch option. The on-screen virtual stick is so ill-equipped to track enemy fighters, no matter how many times you adjust the sensitivity, that is made the tilt control feel about as tight as a mouse keyboard combo. Tilt flying is at least gives you a chance to lead enemy ships and land some solid shots before they pull off amazingly evasion tactics. There are on-screen buttons for switching weapons and firing shots. I really liked the double tap option that locks in auto fire. That's a great idea that should be adopted by other shooters. If we ever encounter aliens like those found in Galaxy on Fire before I shuttled off this mortal coil, remind me never to challenge them to a race. The odds will be stacked against us from the get-go thanks to their superior cornering technology. This feature alone was a huge source of frustration as I zoomed across the cosmos in Fish Lab's otherwise enjoyable space shooter. It's not that I expect to be immediately superior to the bad guys, after all. Where's the challenge in that? However, I do like a little asperity now and then. The ship you fly in Galaxy of Fire are so outclassed by the Vosk alien fighters that you may throw up your hands in irritation. You make wide sweeping arcs across the cosmos in hopes of getting one of these nimble ships in your crosshairs on to watch them perform a hairpin maneuver that is far out of your reach. Good luck tracking the flight path of the Vosk ship. By the time you think you've caught up with your target, it's zipped behind you and it's ripping your shields to pieces. I liked the in-game commerce quite a bit and found it a compelling reason to keep playing even when the controls and enemy flight patterns were trying to force my fingers over to the home button. There are multiple ships and weapons to purchase with the cash you earn by not only completing jobs, but by selling off cargo discovered after each mission. With multiple space stations to offer your wares, you will soon find yourself sniffing out the best deals. There is a real economy on Galaxy of Fire. It's not mule quality, but it is a real effort to give the game a sense of depth that many other shooters happily overlook. Galaxy on Fire is an attractive game that suffers from occasional unfortunate glitches, such as crashing out of the game mid-mission. The cosmic background is also herky-jerky from time to time. However, the ship models look good, and I appreciate little touches like the colorful tails behind ships. The 3D effects are good, giving the game a real sense of space. The explosions are also well done. Galaxy on Fire is loaded with some great ideas, such as the in-game economy. I love the scope of the game, as it really does lay out an interactive cosmos for you to manipulate through your decisions. But there are some problems, such as the frustrating dogfights, the dull opening missions that put distance between you and the open-ended stuff, and the constant replaying of uneventful moments when you restart a mission. This is one of the rare moments that I recommend shaving content. Galaxy on Fire would be so much better if you didn't have to play the first hour of the game. And this brings us to another end of another episode of MS Gamers Hut. I would like to thank MS&Me Radio for letting me talk about my passion with games, and my listeners, who without you, I would not have a show. Next week, I'm going to review some of the best games of 2017. Thank you, and goodbye.